Imagine standing at the edge of a cliff, looking across to where you want to be. You know you have the potential to make that leap, to reach those dreams, but something is holding you back. A nagging fear, a whisper of doubt. It's a feeling we've all experienced at one point or another. That moment where our fear seems to tower over our ambitions, clouding the clear path to our true potential. But what if I told you that those fears, the ones holding you back, are not just conquerable, but are actually the keys to unlocking your fullest life? This is exactly what Brad Axelrad, our guest today, believes and practices. A transformational leader and a master in facing fears, Brad has spent over a decade guiding individuals through their deepest doubts and darkest dragons. With over 200 live events and countless stages shared with thought leaders like Miguel Ruiz and Hendricks, Brad has a unique insight into what really stops us from living our truest lives. In this episode, The 5 Fears Holding You Back, Insights from transformational leader Brad Axelrad, we're diving deep into the core fears that Brad has identified as the most common yet powerful dragons we all face. From the imposter syndrome whispering that you're not good enough, to the fear of scarcity that tightens its grips on our dreams, Brad will help us navigate these turbulent waters. So, if you're ready to transform your fear into your greatest ally, to leap across that chasm and land in a life of fulfillment and truth, this conversation is for you. Join us today as we embark on this deeply personal, vulnerable, and ultimately victorious journey of transformation on the We Are Already Free podcast with Brad Axelrad. Just one last thing before we dive into this episode. So at the time of recording, Brad was in the process of a really powerful emotional transformation in his relationship. He was kind of raw and going through it, and yet he still chose to show up for this chat. So we do share a lot of really valuable tools and ideas and concepts throughout, especially a bit later on in the episode. But I really just want to honor Brad's courage in showing up and sharing from his raw, dark space of the emotions that he was feeling and going through. And I know that you'll hold that with as much sacredness as I do. And I know that this will be of massive value to any of us who navigate really big, really overwhelming feelings at times, especially when it relates to relationships, etc., or whether relationships with others or ourselves. So with that, let's get on with the episode. And thanks again to Brad. You basically help people to face their dragons. And so just for those listening, they'll have heard a kind of intro, a little more about what you're up to. But if you could kind of give us those 5 dragons and why you think this is so important, I'd love to hear that.
I've noticed when we start businesses, people will often say, Brad, how do you help people face their dragons? And I say, well, I help them start a business or help them expand or grow a business. And almost everyone shakes their head that's a business owner and says, yeah, that makes sense, because we face every aspect of ourselves when we're running a business. All of these fears that I talk about. So the 5 fears: imposter, scarcity, value, unheard, and critics. I've produced hundreds of live events. I've worked with thousands of people at different varying levels, one-on-one, small groups, large events. And what I found is that we're all navigating those. Even as I'm on this with you today, it's like, could I pull myself together? Because like I was sharing, I'm a little bit raw right now. It's like, could I pull myself together enough to share my wisdom from a place that would be useful and not from this hurt, scared, angry aspect of myself? So we can go deeper into those, but that's just what comes up for now.
Yeah, man. Well, so this is exactly perfect for me because everything you've said really resonates. I've got full goosebumps right now. So I hear you and I resonate with you, and thank you for coming in raw as well, because what comes to mind for me about that is Ramdas, who just says we are all just walking each other home. And it's a big part of who I am and how I share. I have some very destructive patterns that still play out at times in my life, to the point that when it gets really bad, it very rarely happens anymore. In fact, it's only happened once in the last few years, but I'll actually physically hit myself. And it's a very old pattern of self-harm, basically. And it happened a few months ago, and I talked about it. Once I'd processed it and kind of understood what was going on, I shared about it on my social media. And I said, I'm scared to share this because I'm not sure if my one-to-one coaching clients or if the people who rely on me and believe in me are now going to go, why am I paying this dude all this money? He's fucking crazy. And the opposite was true, was actually those same people were like, thank you so much. This is exactly why you're my coach, because you are so real with where you are. So what I'm reflecting is thank you for being real with where you are. And I'd love to hear if anything comes up for you in what I've just shared.
Well, Nathan, I have tears welling up as you're sharing, brother. So for so many layers of the, you know, the collective human, the collective pain body, the collective trauma we all carry as humans. My personal trauma, hearing you navigating that, it's like I've got this deep sadness for you and others that and myself, that we have to navigate that level of trauma that comes out in these hurtful, self-harming or harming others way. And it's, I'm almost at a loss for words right now. And I will say that this is the first time in my life I said, enough of any anger in me. This is the stop to it. And I actually bought an anger management course and I enrolled a friend in it with me. And we're going to study it together. He lives in Thailand. I'm here in Mexico. We're going to long distance Zoom this thing. I'm just so grateful for the pain that welled up so much in me that got me to finally admit that I've got that's not okay anymore. I can't be angry, but anger manifests in so many different ways. It's just I'm a little bit at a loss for words because I'm so choked up by your vulnerability as well, your transparency. That's what we need, as you said. That's what people really need. People resonate with that, and I'm trying to be as vulnerable as I can be here through this conversation to hopefully free others to have that same level of freedom. I'm doubling down on my internal reflection. That's just where I'm at. I had this like, nope, it's time. The girlfriend just moved out. I kicked her out, which was so let's talk about that. Why not? Let's go there. I think we can process this a little bit. And the pain that would come up for me from her pattern of, let's just call it, I'm scared or I'm nervous or uncomfortable. She's Mexican. And this may sound wrong or horrible, but my experience of Mexicans is they don't tend to look inside and do the work. A lot of cultures don't look inside. They don't go to therapy.
It's true in South Africa too, brother. It's true in so many places, I think.
Right. And my friend in Australia, he's like, we don't do that.
Yeah.
Excuse me, I've got something in my throat. We don't do that. We're just, strong blokes. We don't do that, right? So her trauma response would be to flee, and mine's to fight. I go into fight. Like, no, we're going to fight this out. Let's get to the bottom of this. Don't run away. And then, of course, my attachment style, like avoidant attachment style, anxious attachment style. Her being more avoidant, and just that trauma response of run away from discomfort or self-medicate in some way where I'm like, I want to go in. Of course, I at times will self-medicate too, but her running away a couple times, ending the relationship, leaving. And then this last time I said, and I realized it this morning subconsciously, that it was like, that's it. I'm now taking my power back and I'm kicking you out. That's it. And I'm done. And then I am now in this process of regretting my angry decision a little bit. And of course, my angry outburst behavior, that there's shame, there's, I'm a little bit bewildered. I'm still sort of in this state, over the last 4 days of what just really happened. I am coming back in my body, but that level of rage, I haven't raged like that in 20 years. I'm also studying in this course of perception. It's so much about perception. It's so much about feeling it to heal it. It's not the other person, even though we don't want to victim shame people. There are people that are in situations that have things happen to them. But also it's really about owning our experience and our pattern or response to what's happening, whatever else somebody else is doing. And most of the time it has nothing to do with them. It's always back to mommy or daddy. And we can talk a lot about that if you want to go into that stuff.
Dude. Well, thank you. I mean, first of all, just like I can't, you must be in such an incredibly raw space right now. So I really honor you for even just staying with it for this call. So thank you. And thank you for sharing. And it's interesting how the universe works, because honestly, like, this is what I'm navigating in my relationship right now. Around, I think, I don't know the words you use exactly, but basically my fear is abandonment.
and I can't speak to my lady as much, but when things get intense, she needs time to process. And I am like, no, that means that it's all like everything's gone terrible and it's all bad. And we have to do this immediately. So we've actually been really coming through this right now. So hearing you, I'm like, oh, this sounds so familiar, because I got really angry with her yesterday or the day before. And it's this whole process, like you said, of claiming my anger and being like so clear and in the moment trying to communicate. It's not you. I really want to like have that. I can, yes, I'm saying like this thing has made me angry. That was something that you did or said or didn't do or didn't say, but it's not your responsibility that I'm angry, and how to navigate that in a healthy way, man. So yeah, it's such a vulnerable and delicate space, as you said earlier, that we are all, I think, I don't know a single person in the world today that I've ever met who is not at some level navigating a trauma and massive triggers that are like multi-generational. So just honoring all of us who are at least showing up for it. You know, like we said, it's most South Africans, most Mexicans, most Australians, most people out there in the world are like, nope, I'm not up for this work. So honoring you, honoring your lady, honoring all of us who are doing our best to make some kind of sense of it all.
I've yet to make sense other than what everything you said. And I just want to witness really echo and witness and hold space for that out of control experience that happens, and where we just go into monster mode. It's like, well, what is this aspect of ourselves that has nothing to do with this person in front of us, even though they triggered us in some way? It's like just these old wounds. Yeah, mommy, daddy, the deepest work I've done is something called the Hoffman Institute, the Hoffman process. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. It's hoffmaninstitute.org. There's a global site too for the global stuff, but we pattern trace back to all of our childhood pain, and we're looking for we're doing the work around mommy and daddy or surrogate parents, anyone that influenced us heavily and imprinted their wounding and patterns on us. So we're either modeling or rebelling their patterns. And there's something that Bob Hoffman coined, the negative love syndrome. So essentially these behaviors that we're acting out worked when we were kids, and they would help us get love. Everything we're doing is a cry for love. Like every fucking thing we do is a cry for love. Love me, see me, support me, care for me. But ultimately at the core, I think it's for love. And the negative love syndrome is that as we get older and we act out in these behaviors that used to get us love, it works the opposite. It creates friction. Fuck you, I'm leaving, whatever it is. You're psycho, you're an asshole, whatever it is. So as I'm saying this, I just cannot wait to get back to the Hoffman process. I first did it in 2003, did it in 2005. I went back a couple years later, 36 hours after my father passed, and watched him take his last breath, to be at the Hoffman process, just like crying my eyes out. Like we haven't even started the thing and I'm just broken down in shreds. And, there's 40 people looking at me like, what's up with this guy? We haven't even started. What's going on? Right. And I was so blessed to have somehow manifested the timing to watch my father's spirit lift from his body and turn gray. It was like this. I don't know if you guys have ever seen somebody pass, but it's like his body like turned this ashy gray, and it was so still. It was like the most stillest thing I've ever seen. And to be 36 hours later studying, almost getting angry and dissecting my father's shit that he did to me right after I watched him pass. It was this weird paradoxical like experience. Like, how the fuck can this all be happening right now, where I'm so hurt from his passing and yet so angry at his behaviors that he created so much pain in my life with his anger issues. It's like, how dare he? But it's fascinating. But that was the beginning of the shift of my life into transformational leadership and becoming a leader in the work, was that defining moment of my father's passing. I had a feather tickling me. Share this last part. I had a feather tickling, ignored the feather, brick hit me upside the head. That was, wow, many bricks, but I'm resilient and tough, I'd shake it off. And then the Mack truck was his passing. And I was like, it woke up. I need to stop being a self-indulgent asshole. I wasn't like a greedy, narcissistic douchebag, but I was kind of more just like, seeking external things, drugs, women, alcohol, travel, cars, wealth, real estate, all the fixings of what we think success are. And it was that defining moment of his passing that shifted me back into a place of begging the universe for my contribution and service to show up. So that's why you and I are on this podcast today, was ultimately his passing changed the entire trajectory of my life.
So well, just taking a moment to honor your father and his passing and that incredible medicine. Yeah.
Yeah. That was hard. So I didn't think it was going to be that hard. So whoever's listening that's had to experience that or will in the future, I had no idea. It was 8 years of grief. I thought, oh shit, I'll be fine in a couple months. No, it was years, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, anyone who listens to this podcast much will have heard the story of my dog Sasa passing. That's the closest thing that I've had to, and like, obviously it's completely like my mom and my dad they're both still alive. So I know that I can't even imagine the levels, but with Sasa, the dog, she ran away and it was very unexpected. And there's a whole bunch of pieces in there I won't go into, but the level of pain, I didn't know that I could feel that kind of depth of it's impossible to describe. So I can't even imagine. I literally can't imagine what it would be like to witness that passing of a parent and to navigate that level of grief. And when I hear people speak about it, I'm just like in awe of that level of intensity that we all have to go through, that every single one of us, everyone we know and love will die, and we will die. And that's true.
Yeah. Yeah. The angel of death, Don Miguel Ruiz talks about that. I think it was Miguel. I'm pretty sure it was Miguel in one of his books. But death is always knocking at our door. We needed, now is the time to heal, to be in service, to experience fulfillment, to help others feel fulfilled and experience fulfillment. It's like the angel of death is always there to remind us that this too will end, to your point.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so there's something that keeps coming up for me around this process that you're in right now. We don't have to talk any more about details, etc. But I'm just wondering, in this moment, in this conversation, just really wanting to make space for if there's anything that you need in this moment that you'd like to share with what you're navigating right now with your partner and the kind of intensity of the emotions you're feeling. If there's anything that I can offer, or anything you'd like to reflect on, or emotions you'd like to express, anything at all within the context of this conversation, please do bring it forward. Just wanting to make space for that.
There's a saying, we teach what we most need to learn. And what we're most resisting and most afraid of are the very things that will set us free. It's our moneymaker, our gift to humanity, and our purpose on the planet. And the reason I'm saying that to frame this is that it's like, is anger the holy grail for me that I've been stuffing down at some level? And like, I'm noticing so much sadness around this. Is that my biggest fucking dragon that I have to face right now to finally free myself from myself? And I think it is. And that's so hard for me to say, to come from this place of like, fuck, I guess, I mean, I thought I'd worked on anger. I'm not angry in the day. I'm really not. And most of the time I'm pretty good, but I'm also noticing these little nuances of how anger shows up and how it manifests and how it's projected onto others. Like, I'm in a deep exploration around anger, and I didn't think I would be this switched on by it. Like I'm actually engaged in it in a way that feels like visceral, like I might finally get to the core of my biggest fucking dragon that is my greatest power. And that's really, it's not about slaying your dragon. That's a different metaphor. This is about facing it. It's about finding your fear. It's about facing your fear and using your fear. It's so using it in a way that I might set somebody else free or save somebody's life because they are now free of their anger. I'm trying to be as honest as possible. I don't think I'm that angry out in the world, but like I said, it might manifest in these little ways and come up in opportune times. In particular, it mostly comes out in the most inopportune times. it has caused damage in my life. You know, these patterns, these behaviors has caused damage in relationship and business opportunities. And it has caused a lot of pain. I'm having a level of honesty with myself I don't think I've ever had around the possibility of what this can be.
I've heard that anger is often a sign of a boundary being crossed. Either we've crossed a boundary inside of ourselves, or we've allowed someone else to cross a boundary. And again, not making that about the other person. And I'm finding that because I'm realizing I need more of that warrior energy in my life. And the warrior is powerful. The warrior doesn't fuck around, like the warrior says it like it is and gets shit done and fights for his people, for truth, for obviously a warrior of light, a warrior who's in service. And I, for most of my life, have equated anger with bad. Anger equals bad.
Right.
And so if I feel anger, then I'm bad, it's bad, there's something wrong with me. And what's coming up for me very recently is actually that is stunting me. It's preventing me from having a full, and actually I'm about to begin Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because I want to know what it feels like to lovingly try to dominate someone else, try to, and be dominated by someone and feel that overwhelming sense of being beaten, of someone else being stronger and better than me in a very powerful physical way as a man, as you said earlier. So as I'm hearing you speak around this anger that I think so many of us as men, I'll say as men, I'm not sure about women, but I see it where we've been told, you're dangerous and you need to calm that down. But it's like, actually, how do I channel this so that it's in service? And when I hear you speak now, I hear a man who's stepping into some powerful energy right now in like a really, really big way. So
I take that in because it's great to have it reflected back. And I'm just freaking stoked to be in this conversation with you for many reasons, for the listeners, for me, for you. It's how can we use our fear? I've been saying a long time, but it's really how can we use our patterns that have been demonized, really, to your point. It's so true. And that toxic masculinity conversation that's up. And I years ago almost put my stake in the ground and was about to get out in the world as toxic femininity guy. Let's talk about toxic femininity. I avoided it. Eventually months later, it started to percolate up. But I the pendulum's swinging all over the place. We're all so fucking confused with what's appropriate. There's just all this confusion of masculine, feminine, what roles, and like women have swung way the other way, and man should be connecting with their heart and their mind, and women are independent, but we don't want that. And that's part of the breakdown with my now ex-girlfriend, was like this power struggle of, I want my independence, but I want you to take care of me, and you don't tell me what to do, but I want to be fully taken care of and submit and surrender. And it's just this strange confusion of women want their traditional values, and Mexicans are very traditional. They come from the church, and from the woman stays home and the man provides and protects. But no, you can't tell me what to do now. It's just bizarre. We're all so fucking confused around this stuff.
I feel like you're speaking with the voice of like millions of people around the world right now, because I really believe that, this is what my lady and I are navigating as well, is like, how can she surrender more? Because we've found when I step into the role of leadership, loving masculine leadership, and she sinks into the role of surrender and femininity, that there is a really beautiful dynamic that starts to play out. But it feels in a way very hard for both of us, because I'm used to being like the soft, gentle, nice guy, and she's used to being very powerfully in her masculine, like, I get shit done, I've got a plan, like I'm moving forward. And we both are kind of exhausted from those roles. And so it's like how to come together and soften into a different way together, in a way that makes sense. Because like you said, we're all fucking confused right now. And honest, on the Instagram, it's like everyone seems to have all the answers. But I don't know, man. We're all just walking each other home. I come back to that.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so I would have never guessed that from you. Honestly, I experience you as this very strong, centered, masculine presence. But what I've found in a lot of men, and I've been doing men's work since 2004 or 5. a long time, either as leader, participant. And I've led groups for about 5 years. I have about 5 years under my belt of leading in-person groups. And I do hear the power of being able to push into these men and cry. But here's what I found in being in a lot of these men's circles. Unfortunately, the new expected masculine is that, like you were saying, of soft, not dangerous, present, and, the toxic masculine guy is this dominant, harmful, violent, dangerous, cocksucker guy, right? And there's so much power in all of that, though, like you said, but we just need to take the good power out of all that I just said there. It's like there's such good power in that shadow aspect of us and that warrior killer aspect. Women want that in us so badly, but we have to learn to channel it. But what I'm saying is that many men have not tuned into that because they've been enculturated and domesticated into, we can't, because of toxic masculine Me Too movement shit. But I think women are wanting it again. It's a pendulum swinging back. They're starting to really want it again. It's like, okay, fuck these wimpy guys that aren't going to stand up for themselves and have boundaries and fucking claim me and, just lead me in a way that's super dangerous, but totally I want it, right? It's like they want it so badly, but we as men have to figure out how to get rid of the shadow side of the violence, the anger, the murderer, the fucking killer aspect of it, right? It's like we want to pull the goodness of that. But it's just unfortunate men have skipped stage 1 masculinity, to use David Data's terminology. I'm sure you've read his shit by now, but like that core stage 1 killer masculine, and they've gone right to stage 2, which is like neutral. Everyone's trying to be really neutral, and we're all seeking to get to stage 3, but many have leapt over stage 1, and they're in this stage 2. And the men's work I did, the first one was called the Sterling Institute of Relationship. And it was just cocksucker, ex-convict, just killer, gnarly energy. People being drudged from the darkest depths of society into getting back to where they're up above, ground level, like all different walks of lives. But there were those guys in there. And to see the power in all these different levels of men. And, we oftentimes want to associate just with the conscious man or the man that's done the work, and fuck that. It's like, there's great lessons from all these different sects of socioeconomic, levels. There's just great power in all of that. But anyway.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. I mean, I think there's a book I've been reading. I actually haven't read David Data, by the way, and I just got his audiobook because I've obviously heard of The Way of the Superior Man for years, many times, and I just haven't I'm going to get to that at some point, but I've been reading one called Manhood by a guy named Steve Biddulph, which is from the 90s, and he says in the beginning, he's like, the thing about feminism, we all thought it was a great idea, but the reality is that feminists aren't fucking the feminist dudes. He's like very straightforward. He's like, they saying that it's so lovely that these men are so, but those aren't the men who are getting in bed with those women. Those women do not want to get in bed with that kind of man, because that kind of man has lost his nuts. He's lost his power. And so I think what you're saying is true, is that we're swinging back into the direction where more and more women and more men are waking up to be like, hang on a second, we've given up too much. We've given up eros. We've given up the power of the dynamic, of the polarity, of the friction of the polarity, and it's not working for us. So I think maybe that's what this whole conversation that we're having is kind of about, is us as men realizing that how to have that sacred rage become of an invigorating fire, an alchemical fire that allows us to really be in our power for those around us.
Preach, brother. That was good. Yeah.
Well,
sacred rage.
Sacred rage, man. So listen, I want to just really focus a bit in on the work that you do, because it is so valuable. Yeah. And like I said, when I checked out your website, I was just like, I think I may need to at some point align with this dude, because I really resonate. And so could you summarize or at least give the talk that the listener could understand around how is it that you help people to face their dragons, those 5 dragons you mentioned earlier? And what is it that's keeping people stuck? And why aren't people facing those dragons? Like, wherever you want to take that. But this is your story, and I would love to hear it.
Cool. I think it should start a little bit just from the Genesis story. So I became the Hoffman. I wanted to keep Hoffman in my life so much because the work was so valuable. And after witnessing it post-father, it was incredible. So I became the Orange County, California graduate facilitator, and I was teaching teaching the Hoffman principles and processes, and we were doing the work on a monthly basis for a couple years. But I wanted to expand the teaching and the conversation into quantum physics and neuroscience and even medicines, plant medicines and things like this. Those were kind of before we called them plant medicines, or at least before it was a mainstream conversation. And I was doing them. Little did we know that all the party rave drugs were the actual medicines, the ketamine, the MDMA, it's so hilarious.
Yeah, right.
They're all the transformational medicines. But anyway, I started producing events. Those events, within 8 weeks of me having a circle of 8 people in a living room, we manifested NBC Nightly News. I'm on national media in the US. And that just led into all these other media outlets picking me up. LA Times, Orange County Register, PBS television. It's like, holy shit, my purpose really showed up when I was in this intense fucking asking. And guys, I want to say this, it's not about so much that we need to stay high vibe only or everything is frequency. I find that it's really about our asking and the level of intensity and our full fucking surrender to being in service. That's when things show up. And I'm getting chills right now. Like I was so fucking ready to be in service and I was in the lowest vibration possible. So everything isn't always, in my experience, high vibe will attract high vibe. Low vibe attracts low vibe. My purpose fucking showed up when I was serious and ready. And that's when it'll show up for you, is when you've had enough and you're fucking done playing small and you're done letting fear get in the way of you finally stepping fully into whatever it is that is you should be doing. It's fucking there. So that's what kind of where the dragons came out. It's like we're ignoring and the feathers tickling. There's a little God whisper, whatever you want to call it. Like the feathers fucking tickling and we're ignoring it. And you'll hit a brick. Or you won't. You'll just drink it away. You'll smoke weed. You'll have sex, watch porn, shop, whatever you travel, whatever you do to avoid or distract yourself from doing your purposeful work in the world. And that's kind of where all of this, that was the genesis of this. And I found that most of us are navigating these kind of 5 core things, like I'd mentioned before: imposter, scarcity, value, unheard, and critic. So imposter, who am I to do this? I'm standing in 8 weeks into starting this fucking community and I'm on stage on national media, shaking in my boots like, wow, but I've had to do it. I had no choice but to step up. This fucking news station's there with the biggest cameras you've ever seen. It's crazy. So I had to face my imposter dragon personally, and I challenge you. Exposure therapy is one of the biggest ways to move through a lot of our fears. It's like, if you've got a fear of this, go do it. A fear of public speaking, believe it or not, was my greatest fear. I still have it. It's the biggest fear above dying on the planet. I'm still fucking mortified half the time I get on stage, but I've got to step up. I've learned to channel the energy, like we're saying. I use it as state change and use it as power and get back into my excitedness. So that's a big frame, but that's imposter. Scarcity, it's kind of obvious. You're afraid you're not going to get enough clients. So why even start anyway? It's not going to work. Oh my God, I better stay stuck where I'm miserable in a job I hate instead of stepping out and doing the business I've really wanted to create, and keep leaning in, keep doing the work. Value is essentially, you don't charge what you're worth. And, it's important to own who we are and say, you know what, I come from producing 200 live events. I've been on all this media. I had a podcast that I interviewed Don Miguel Ruiz as guest number 1 of the 4 Agreements, Gay Hendricks, guest number 2, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, Christine Carlson, number 3. Like, I've done all this cool shit. And I still battle all these things too, though. I want to let you off the hook here. I'm still imposter, scarcity, value, unheard, and critics. They're still in my experience, but I keep leaning in. I keep doing the work. exposure therapy, diving in, plant medicine, any way you can get in there. Imposter, scarcity, value, unheard. If I share a message, who am I to fucking do this? Why should I craft this entire brand and, the Face Your Dragon platform and get it out there? What if nobody likes it? What if it doesn't work? What if I post something and I'm unheard? And then what if my girlfriend doesn't hear me, or my husband, or my whatever, my boss, my friend? We've got to feel these feelings, and they're okay. It's okay to feel all of them. Critics, pretty obvious. What if I put myself out there and my friends or family don't see me on Facebook, and they used to know me as this MDMA drugging, taking club kid back in San Francisco 20 years ago that was just raging in the city, having the time of my life, Who is Brad to be sharing a message, So Hendricks talks a lot about that we don't want to outshine our family in some way. And you guys can listen at faceyourdragonpodcast.com. You can listen to all these celebrity interviews. I interviewed JP Sears and Ariel Ford, who was the publicist for Deepak Chopra. And just really powerful leaders. And we get in this great conversation around facing your dragon. So that's it. The way I do it, again, is I'm helping people pattern trace a lot back to where they learned a lot of these things. We do a lot of processes around just journaling our entire life story, and then circling and finding parts of any patterns of fear. I had doubt, I had anger, I had whatever it is, and really pattern tracing and finding where these things came from, so we can start to acknowledge them and own them. And what we resist persists. So just the ability to find them and ferret them out and shine the light of awareness on them. And as Barnett Bain said on the Face Your Dragon podcast, he's one of the most brilliant people I know. He produced What Dreams May Come with Robin Williams, and produced the movie Celestine Prophecy. And he did Eckhart Tolle's children's book. Like he's episode number 4, just brilliant. But he says, Brad, it's about the dragons just whimpering in the dark corner. Just turn on the light, just turn the fucking light on. So anyway, I'm just kind of flowing some things, but in essence, these are things that come up when we build a business. But my core business is really helping people craft their message through their life story, understanding that their pain and their trauma and their challenges are their gift to humanity. It's what we're most resisting and most afraid of. Like I said, that's really what we can help others with. So if we have the courage to package that up, build a business around it, and get out there and share it, that's my deepest like love.
Wow, man. I feel like we've covered some wild and beautiful, I think in a way, just hearing your vulnerability and your rawness and realness is like the best ad that I could ever, for me personally, and the way, and also my listeners, like we're the kind of people, like anyone who listens to this podcast listens because they actually are kind of done with all the polished
the gurus
mirrors. It's just like, we just want to see people, like, what do you really, because I think in that, like, clearly you've navigated enough to have developed a depth of insight and capacity for supporting others on that path. I think that's part of my prayer that I say, almost every day is giving thanks to my guardians, my guides, and my allies, those who've walked before, the mentors, the teachers. And I ask them to continue guiding me so that I too can guide others, so that I can be, so that it's like, that's all each of us is on this beautiful path of learning, growing, feeling, losing, feeling pain, all the rest of it, so that we can then be in service to others, that when someone comes and says, I'm having this experience, it could be like, I'm with you, and I don't have to turn away from that because I know what that feels like.
Right.
So thank you for all of this. And just kind of bringing it towards a close here, but I'm, as always, curious to hear, when you hear we are already free, what comes up for you?
At the simplest level, we're creating our own prison. we're creating this self-inflicted prison in ourselves, and we are actually already free. We are the leaders that we need to be. We doubt ourselves, and we question who we are. Who am I to do this? All these things come up, but your core essence, your beautiful God, spiritual essence self, is the truth. That's the freedom. and we have this opportunity to peel back the layers of all this inauthentic self-inflicted prison. So yeah, that's what comes up for me. Our essence is pure love, pure freedom.
Beautiful. Thank you, brother. I just saw a video actually where this guy basically talks about the 10 reasons that I don't know what the title is, but he basically says we are born into a prison in the way our society is structured as well. Yeah. And so I think anyone who's choosing to step in and, like you said, face the fears, face the dragons, is giving themselves the keys to this prison. So yeah, thank you for your work. And in terms of what you're busy with right now, like, would you just say to direct people to Face Your Dragons? Is it faceyourdragons.com?
Yeah, faceyourdragon.com. So faceyourdragon.com. Basically, what there's been about 5 times in my life I knew my life was going to change in a drastic way. I had this intuitive hit, the intuitive nudge, like they said in the movie The Secret. We need to act on that nudge. And I had an absolute moment when I knew I was supposed to do a press release and got on NBC Nightly News. And there's been a couple times since then, but that was in 2006. So here we are, 2023. Wait, was that 2000? Yeah, it was 2006. Gosh, it's been a long time. FaceYourDragon.com is where you can listen to the podcast. You can schedule a call. You can take a quiz to discover the number one hidden fear stopping you from earning what you're worth. But the reason I framed it with this intuitive nudge thing is that 3 weeks ago, I was either going to start the podcast again or get myself on a lot of podcasts. I went the other route. I'm like, I want to get on 50 podcasts. So I came up with this amazing way to very quickly get on a lot of podcasts. That's why we're on right now. So getmeonpodcast.com is the new business. I'm taking all of this work and summing it down into this simple, helping people remove the shit that gets in the way from them wanting to get on a lot of podcasts to share their message. So getmeonpodcast.com. This is the crazy thing. When you know, that intuitive nudge, we have to listen. I fucking knew with 100% certainty this was going to work. We booked 60 sales calls in 3 weeks' time. So I'm just on sales call after sales call, building infrastructure, all the systems, adding team. So I'm saying all this to say, listen to the nudge. And if you want to get on podcasts and face all the dragons in the way of that, getmeonpodcast.com.
Epic, brother. Well, thank you so much, Brad. And I can only say I wish you good processing and good learnings for however you're navigating what you're going through right now. And I'm excited for you. Also, it's easy to be excited for you because I'm not you having to actually navigate the feelings right now. But having gone through,
I feel better from this conversation, brother. Yeah, I already am so grateful. So grateful.
Oh man, thank you so much. What a blessing. It's a real pleasure, and it's an interesting. I just never know how it's going to go, and more, it's like what you were talking about. You talk about zones of genius, which I love from
nice.
The Gay Hendricks, is it? Yeah. Oh man, that book. I'm reading that book at the moment. Someone recommended it to me, and it's given me so much context for why I have time and again shot myself down when things are just getting good. So I'm getting so much value out of that book. But the whole zone of genius thing, I've lost my train of thought thinking about The Big Leap now.
Oh, it's such a good book, man. I recommend everybody read that.
Oh, definitely. Sure. 100%. I'm recommending it to everyone. But in this moment, because part of my zone of genius is basically, because I did one of the exercises in the book, and it wasn't like I didn't know it, but like going through it again just helped me so much, which is basically like this conversation we've just had. I had a bunch of questions that I literally basically ignored. And I just completely went with, because my zone of genius is having authentic connection and inspiring others to dive into full authenticity and that being of value to those who are a part of it. So like to have this conversation with you and feel safe enough to come fully in and bring all of you, for me is the fulfillment of my genius. Like it just feels so good. And I feel so excited that anyone who gets to hear this has an opportunity to hear something that is absolutely real and raw and true. So thank you so much for being in for that, brother. Just honoring you every step of the way.
You're doing great, brother. This is to be able to have a space safe enough for us to do this is powerful. So thank you, man.
And just like that, we've come to the end of a journey through the labyrinth of our deepest fears with Brad Axelrad. Thank you again, Brad, for your courageous authenticity, for modeling the transformations you teach. You can find out more about Brad Axelrad by visiting the show notes or faceyourdragon.com. Dear listener, together we face the dragons and come out victorious. But remember, as Brad beautifully articulated, these fears are not roadblocks. They're signposts guiding us towards our true potential. So here's a challenge for you. In the spirit of today's revelations and inspirations, why not take a bold step towards conquering your fears? Join me for a 5-day morning practice challenge, a journey designed to start your day with intention, purpose, and a newfound resilience against those inner dragons. Imagine waking up every day with a practice that empowers you, that sets the tone for a life not dictated by fear, but driven by authenticity and courage. It's not just about facing the day, it's about reshaping your life, one morning, a few minutes at a time. So if you feel ready to transform your mornings and in turn transform your life, then join the challenge now by visiting alreadyfree.me/yes or visiting the show notes on your podcast app. Let's harness the morning's fresh energy together, turning those deepest fears into our greatest strengths. You can also find links to our lovely guest Brad and find out more about his work and the incredible way that he's serving his communities at the links in the show notes. Until next time, keep facing those dragons, and please remember that even when fear says otherwise, we are already free. See you next week.